Bonjour mes amis, comment ça va? Hein? C'est magnifique. Hein? Buenos dias, mis amigos. G'day, if you're Australian. Willkommen. We're so pleased to be here with you today, and my thanks very specifically to Lars Howe, just one of my all-time favorite people, and to the President. Thank you, sir, for your time, and the Mexican Federation. We are honored to be here as moderators and also with the very distinguished panel that we have this morning. We very much hope that you will ask questions. The panel is largely American, one Australian, and we apologize in advance for the Americans. We will not suggest that anything that's being done in American sport is necessarily the right way or necessarily what water polo should do. So we're hoping that there may be a sound bite, there may be a phrase, a thought that will come from the discussion that you may be able to take back to your area of expertise and that you may benefit from this distinguished group. So my thanks to our Mexican hosts very sincerely for this magnificent setting. And I'm going to now step over to the seats, and we'll start this portion. So we have with us this morning, we have four very distinguished gentlemen representing professional sport in many different formats. We have representatives from professional basketball, from professional American football, from professional ice hockey, and from professional cricket. They bring with them, I think, a team sport orientation that is, I think, perhaps something for us to look at during the course of these presentations. I've asked the panel to be intimate. I tend, when I moderate, and I know some of you from my time with Sport Accord, and I always ask my panelists to speak among themselves intimately, to be able to challenge each other, to not accept even what they themselves are saying as panelists, and in part to be a little bit provocative, hopefully for your benefit. If they are not provocative, then I will be on your behalf. We will have time for questions. And we'd like to make sure that a microphone can get to you and that you may be able to use the microphone to ask a question. There are no wrong questions or bad questions because what you may be thinking and may be hesitant to ask is something that we think may be very, very beneficial to someone who does not have the courage to ask that question. So Cornell, with your blessing, we will start our presentation here. I have with me the former ambassador from Denmark for the United States and also the former president of the National Hockey League team that was based in our state of North Carolina, Jim Cain. Jim, thank you for being with us. Next to him from Australia, but now based in Canada, running a sport that is largely dominated by people from India, Mr. Ben Kavenagh. And Ben is got a long history inside of many different sports, having been involved with basketball and Australian rules football. Further on, the Chief Operating Officer of the Baltimore Colts of the American National Football League. Pete has been with the I said Baltimore Colts, and that's only to reflect I picked up on that sly glance. They are now the Indianapolis Colts. My apologies. They used to be the Baltimore Colts, and when he started his career, they were the Baltimore Colts. They are now the Indianapolis Colts, and he has been with the team and in professional football for the last 34 years. And then to his left is Rick Fuson from the Indianapolis Pacers of the National Basketball Association. He too has been with the Pacers for more than 3 decades. So these two gentlemen to my far left have shown a great inability to get fired in their positions and have been long-standing with their respective teams. We're going to start, though, I think, with the ambassador, with Jim Cain, who has had an opportunity to look at the sport of hockey from a very intimate setting. And we were talking last night at the dinner, and he mentioned that over the course of about a 15-year period, the National Hockey League instituted a number of changes to enhance the appeal of its game. And he'll talk about the fact that for many people, ice hockey did not televise well. And ice hockey had a tendency to have a smaller audience in the United States and Canada, although not necessarily true in Canada, from many of the other professional sports, but they were incentivized to make change, to make the sport more popular. And I think his opening remarks here will serve FINA and the water polo community, I think, extremely well. So I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Rick. It's a pleasure, Mr. President, Mr. Director, to be here with you today. And as Rick said, prior to my diplomatic service, I had the honor of serving in the National Hockey League as the president of one of the NHL teams. And it's the experience there that I think is most instructive for today's event, because our team, which used to be the Hartford Whalers, we moved to North Carolina in 1996. One of the great teams of the NHL. We came down to North Carolina in 1996. And it was one of the great rags to riches, Cinderella, worst to best stories in modern history in our sport. Let me give you a picture. In 1997, when we started playing in Greensboro, North Carolina, in a 2-year period while we're building our new arena in Raleigh, where I'm from, 24,000-seat arena in Greensboro, where a lot of the NCAA championships are played, we were so bad and our support was so poor that in the fall of 1997, when the New York Rangers came to visit, played our team in Greensboro, with Wayne Gretzky on the ice, Sports Illustrated did a cover story that said, "Hockey is a failure in the Carolinas." There were 1,000 people in the arena with Gretzky on the ice in a 24,000-seat stadium. If you think that wasn't bad enough, about 2 weeks later, we unveiled the mascot, our new mascot. And again, at this point, I'm the outside lawyer for this organization. We unveiled the mascot. We put the mascot in the Zamboni, the ice scraping machine that you see in ice sports. We put him inside the Zamboni, took him out to the ice, the middle of the first intermission, and the announcer said, he was an ice hog, by the way. Go figure, ice hog. North Carolina has 10,000 pigs. That's why he was an ice hog. The announcer says, "Okay, everybody scream, 'Suey Pig!' and we'll get the mascot out." So everybody screams, "Suey Pig!" and the cover of the Zamboni lifts up, and all you see are 2 dangling feet. Our mascot had been asphyxiated by the dry ice fumes in the Zamboni. We almost killed our mascot on opening night. Great way to start. Fast forward 4 years later, we're on the way to the Stanley Cup Finals for the first time. Sports Illustrated comes back in our new building in Raleigh. They do a cover story. There's a storm coming. Hurricanes charge into the Carolinas. That season we had 18 straight regular season sellouts. We went to the finals against the Detroit Red Wings, lost in Game 7. We had the 4th highest attendance in the National Hockey League that year. We tripled our asset value, according to Forbes magazine, from $60 million to $180 million. And you know how difficult, Rick, that is to do for a team. So, and that set us on a trajectory to win the Stanley Cup championship 3 years later. So the lessons from that turnaround, some of them may be relevant to you. As Rick said, some of the lessons the National Hockey League went through when they were trying to make their sport more appealing to the fans. So I've tried to distill this into 4 lessons real quickly, and then we'll get later to the questions. But the 4 lessons I take away that might be relevant to you are as follows. Number 1, cultivate and celebrate your heroes. There's a reason that Los Angeles brought Wayne Gretzky to L.A. in 1988. There's a reason that L.A. brought David Beckham to Los Angeles in 2008. At least in America, we love to celebrate our heroes. We didn't have any heroes. We had to cultivate those for the fan base. And let me tell you, that does not come naturally to to the guys who run team operations. They don't like to have players who are necessarily beloved by the fans because it increases their value, and they use that value as leverage when it comes time for labor contract negotiations. In fact, in the summer of 1999, as we're moving from Greensboro to Raleigh in our new building, our captain was Keith Primo. We had Primo on the back of a Zamboni driving down the interstate, driven by the great NASCAR legend Richard Petty. You've heard of Richard Petty, perhaps. So this commercial was so great, it made Primo such a great star. Primo used that leverage to hold out in his contract negotiations 2 months later. In fact, we didn't re-sign him. He went to Philadelphia and became a great rival. And that's my second lesson. Great rivalries really sell. If you looked at what the Carolina Hurricanes fans thought about Scott Stevens, who was a wingman for the New Jersey Devils in 2002, you would think the word hate was brought to a new level. Cultivating rivalries, regional, political, nationalistic, really helped for us. We created great rivalries between Primo, who went to the Flyers, and the Devils, who had Scott Stevens, who we hated, who gave 2 of our players concussions, and the Detroit Red Wings, who, of course, are from Detroit, and our owner is from Detroit. And the rivalries we were able to create every time those teams came to town, which was 2 or 3 times a year, gave us an excuse to sell out our building. And it's all about getting fans in the seats. Second rule, rabid rivalries really sell. Third rule, for sustainability, you have to reach out to the grassroots. And this is the development point that I know you'll get into later. In North Carolina, we had 2 sheets of ice in our region. We had no children playing organized ice hockey. We had to create an interest in the sport. Many ways to do that, getting the fans to connect with the players, getting other investments with the corporate alliances going in the marketplace. But now, fast forward, we have 10 ice sheets. We have about 3,000 young people playing ice hockey, organized ice hockey in the region. Connecting with the grassroots is the way a lot of the NHL teams have been successful in cultivating popularity of their sport. Fourth lesson, you have to embrace the power of television. The reason that the NHL 10, 15 years ago decided they had to do something radically different with their rules is that our sport was not translating well on television. It wasn't particularly exciting. Fans didn't like to watch it on television. They would watch it in the arena. So the NHL did about 8 things to try to make that sport more exciting. The first thing they did, which was not a great success, by the way, Fox Television was the new contract partner for the NHL, and they put sensors in the puck that it caused the puck to glow when you watched it on television. It was a big orange glow. The thinking was you could see the puck better on television so the fans would watch it. That didn't really work all that well, but it was creative, and at least they tried something. Here are the other things they did, and I'll do this really quickly, Rick. They created more exhibition games. They created the All-Star Game. They created outdoor games. We have a Winter Classic now that's the most watched television event for hockey fans, except for the National Hockey League Stanley Cup Championship. They made scoring more frequent. Hockey is a low-scoring game. People like to see scores. They'd like to see fights, too, maybe, in our sport. But they like to see scores. So they did a number of things to make scoring more active. They added an extra point in the standings for games won in overtime. They introduced the shootout to eliminate tie games. And they changed the way the goal was built and the way the goalie's pads and his equipment was built in order to allow more frequent goals. They made his pads smaller. They made his stick shorter. They made the goal bigger, all to create more offensive opportunities, which the fans like to see. And they changed the blue lines and the red lines to allow players to move more quickly and to prevent defensive trapping in the middle, knowing that fans like to see aggressive, rapid movement and frequent scoring, which gives the fan what they pay their money for. 8 lessons. I look forward to talking about them later and enjoying being here with you this morning. Thank you so much.
Jim, thank you so much. And I think that the one that resonated with me the most and that may have a value for the water polo world is that the ice hockey in the United States had a rule called offsides. Many of you are familiar with it from football, soccer, and many people didn't understand the rule. They didn't understand why the rule existed. They didn't understand what caused the offense to take place when a team was offsides. And the league made a decision that the traditionalists, the people who had built the sport, very much struggled with, and that was to remove lines that created the offsides penalty or the offside stoppage of play. Water polo, as you know, has many whistles. Many times the sport is stopped. And the National Hockey League, again, we want to make sure that our comments up here today are not to say that the way it may have worked in this league or in this country is right for your sport, but we ask that you at least have that openness to think about it. The Hockey League, which was in Canada and the United States, eliminated this line on the ice that caused a stoppage of play which slowed the game down. The result was the game became faster and the number of goals scored went up. And I think the National Hockey League probably largely believes that while it was difficult to implement that rule change, it was valuable to the health of the sport long term. Our next guest is from the Melbourne area, Geelong of Australia, and someone that I'm very much looking forward to hearing speak because A, he'll have an accent unlike the others on the panel, and B, I think he'll bring an international perspective. Mr. Ben Kavenagh.
Thank you, Rick. As Rick mentioned, I'm an Australian working in Canada, running a sport that is at its most popular in India. But I'm talking today about a version of the sport that has really catapulted and changed it in the last 10 years, and interestingly enough, a version that was actually initially opposed by India. Today I'm here to talk about T20 cricket. I thought it might be a nice synergy to provide 20 lessons we've learned, given that I'm talking about T20 cricket. But given that many of you have probably got a perception of cricket as being a sport that's played over numerous days, sometimes without even a result, the last thing I want to do is speak to you for a long time and exaggerate that perception. I've come up with a smaller number that's still relevant to our game. In cricket, when you hit the ball out of the field on the full, a bit like a home run in baseball, you get 6 runs or 6 points. So I'm going to talk to you today about 6 lessons that we've learnt from cricket. The first lesson is to know your audience. It's a pretty relevant point for me at this point in time. I don't know many people in this room, and I don't know what your knowledge of cricket is. Just keen to do a quick test. Just from a quick show of hands, interested to know what people think about how long an international cricket game goes for. Anyone in the room think it's 5 days, number A? Show of hands. Fair few. Anyone think 7 hours, number B? Letter B. Anyone think C, 3 hours? Anyone else got any other suggestions on what it might be? All 3, good. We've got a few cricket people here, and I'm here to talk about number C, the most recent version that's been around for about 10 years. A quick quirky one. Anyone in this country know which nation pipped China for the bronze medal at the Asian Games? Anyone from Japan in this room? There's not. Well, there you go. I didn't know that one a year ago myself, to be honest. So look, the first one, just want to give you a quick snapshot on where T20 cricket's come from in the last 10 years. It's the newest form of our 3 international formats. The first domestic game took place in England in 2003. 2 years later, our first international match took place. 2 years after that, 2007, we had our first global event, which attracted audiences of over 100 million people in sell-out crowds in South Africa. Following that season, the domestic Indian Premier League commenced, cricket's first franchise-based league. It attracted bids of over 100 million US from new league team owners, and the top players were paid over 1 million US for a 6-week contract. To give you an idea of the scale of this event, the average attendances in that season were second only to the NFL. A year later, in 2009, the ICC World 20 became a men's and women's event, breaking broadcast records for women's cricket. In 2009, we also witnessed the first Champions League, a club-based competition that was valued at over 900 million US over 10 years. In 2010, the USA hosted its first T20 match. So back to the lessons. Knowing your audience. T20 cricket is a product of research, but, and this is a big but, it is also a format that reflects and complements the sport and its values and spirit. T20 cricket has its roots in market research conducted by the English Cricket Board to find out why attendances at domestic cricket were so low. It turned out that while people were interested in the sport, they didn't have time to invest in the long matches. This is where the sport is important. Unlike some other shorter formats of cricket that have been tried in the past, T20 closely mirrors the other formats of our sport. It uses the same field size, uses the same number of players, the same equipment, very similar playing conditions, and requires little adaptation for participants. The second lesson, don't be afraid to lead. The timeline I presented at the start of the seminar is a seamless upward curve, but history is very easy to write in hindsight. T20's success has been based on foresight, belligerence, and good fortune, all in similar measures. Our original decision to proceed with the domestic competition in England was approved with a slender 11-7 majority, and that scepticism was mirrored at international level. Our biggest national federation, as I mentioned, India, wanted nothing to do with the format. It was pitched, that's why we pitched the first ever global event as an invitational, due to concerns that some members may not attend. In the end, everyone showed up, and although several of India's most high-profile and marketable players asked not to be considered, a youthful India side that had only ever played one T20 international beforehand won a fairy tale final against Pakistan. This gripping match was the biggest television event for the year in South Africa, and the rest, as they say, is history. Just some of the scenes there after India won this tournament that they didn't want to initially participate in. The next lesson, think big, think global. The first ICC World 20 helped consolidate the sport's power base, not just inside India, but also in established cricket markets, by attracting new demographic groups, particularly females and families. Following this demographic growth, we have a real target now on growing the game in new geographic areas. Cricket is a long way from being a major sport in the USA. But the combined Caribbean and South Asian expatriate population provides an audience of around 15 million people in the US, and tens of thousands of people are playing the game socially. This is why it was decided to break with tradition and give the US a wild card to one of our qualifying events. This ruffled a few feathers, but it inspired an uplift in performance from the US national side and brought American cricket to CNN for the first time. The same event saw another great success story. Afghanistan completed a remarkable journey to the top level of our new game. We hope this might be the start of a new rivalry, and it's already been noted by the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton that if we are searching for a model of how to meet international challenges with skill and dedication and teamwork, we need look no further than the Afghan national cricket team. This global growth has continued, and more of our $300 million development fund has been channelled into a qualifying tournament that has allowed all 100 members to participate, and an increased finals event now including 16 teams. Just, some pictures of the Afghan team and some of the rituals they need to go through during and after games. The fourth lesson, think different. This first World Cup was just a men's event. The next time we included the women's team as well. We tried something different, and the men's and women's semi-finals were staged at the same venue on the same day as part of the same ticket price. Our broadcasters supported the venture, televising both matches, and it has given women's cricket an immense boost and helped stimulate the rapid growth in both profile and participation. T20's initial success was fuelled not only from content, but also from packaging. It came wrapped in cheerleaders, loud music, and dunk tanks. But our research tells us the fans are following the game first and foremost for its cricket content. The focus of our packaging is subtly evolving to things that matter most to spectators in the grounds and at home. We worry a lot about the simple things, like the comfort and the shade of spectators, their access to food and drink. High-quality big-screen presentations and PA announcers are essential, and the music follows the action, not the other way around. Next lesson is understanding the economics and knowing your limits. T20 cricket has been so successful in a short time frame that it has stimulated a rise in supply and demand. Unfortunately, the two are not necessarily growing in harmony. On the supply side, the success of events has encouraged private entities to enter the market. Some of these have already faded into history, but others have remained live and real threats in both established and emerging markets. We've had to completely overhaul our regulatory framework and address those threats, introducing both non-obligation certificates for overseas players and new regulations and penalties governing official and unofficial cricket. Also, on the supply side, we've opted to strategically restrict the volume of T20 matches, leaving breathing space for the other formats and the now many successful T20 domestic leagues. We know we can't grow the game on our own, and the global events might not be the best means for expanding our foothold in North America particularly. A domestic professional league might be the more efficient option there. The same way the NFL has staged games in London, the Indian Premier League may look to stage games in New York. Watch this space. On the demand side, customers are screaming for more T20, but interestingly, not at the expense of the other formats. In most of our other major markets, our research suggests that consumers are satisfied with the current levels of Test and one-day cricket. And the final lesson, don't neglect your heritage and your core audience. The heritage of our game relates back to a game that's been played internationally for 130 years. Since the explosion of T20 cricket, we've actually spent more time and energy researching the other two formats of the game than T20. We are confident at present that all three formats retain strong public appeal and there is excellent crossover between the interest. Each of our formats claims around 600 to 700 million passionate fans. Our focus now is twofold: better differentiating the three formats in the minds of the consumers and introducing greater context to the calendar and events of our other formats. We think context is as important as content. As such, we introduced a global league for one-day cricket to enhance the context of every international match. We introduced a global league for Test cricket, which was planned to climax in a playoff to determine the best team in this format. This is a current topic of some real political debate, and that's probably a whole new presentation at the moment. These are not designed to replace historic Ashes series like Australia versus England, but rather to give them context, but also provide more meaning to less contextual games involving smaller profile countries. So in summary, they're the 6 lessons that we've learnt from our new format of the game. We have many more lessons to learn and some big questions still to answer. T20 might be the format that takes cricket back into the Olympics. Some think there may be other formats, perhaps sixes cricket, beach cricket, the indoor game that can take our sport into smaller stadium and multi-sport games. At the moment, our hands are full, balancing the 3 formats that we are fortunate to have. And in the coming years, balancing and promoting these will be our focus. I thank you for listening. I'm happy to share more insights, but importantly, I'm really keen to learn from you guys over the next couple of days. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. I think it may be, I'm putting small summaries on top of all of these. It may be instructive to consider that cricket, which is such a sport steeped in tradition, would have considered creating a line extension, if you're a marketing person, a different form of cricket to grow their game. For those of you with Olympic federations, we know that volleyball has done that with beach volleyball. We know that football has done it with futsal. We know that basketball is looking to come into the Olympic Games with a 3-on-3 version. That doesn't mean that it may be right for water polo, but it does suggest that sports are willing to look at different versions of themselves to possibly create more worldwide appeal. We also can't automatically take for granted that every country has the ability to try things. So it may be that it falls to larger, more developed water polo countries to test things that maybe smaller countries are not able to do. But Ben, I think that's some great observations and great commentary. Our next speaker from the Indianapolis Colts, Mr. Pete Ward. Thanks.
Thank you. It's really an honor for me to be here. The most I know about water polo is that it's very exciting and a very tough sport to play, and I appreciate the invitation. American professional football, okay, good. American professional football is also known as the National Football League, the NFL, and it owes much of its prosperity to television. In 1958, there was a momentous event in which the NFL championship game was telecast to the entire nation for the very first time. And it was done during prime time, and as luck would have it, it was an extremely exciting game. In fact, the media called it the greatest game ever played, for American football, of course. And so that was really what catapulted the game into the minds of Americans and began its meteoric rise in popularity that it enjoys today. So it's a game that translates well to television, and let me just show you an example. So this is the opening to Sunday Night Football, which is an American institution now. So bear with me, this is so I can make a point here. The blue team is my team, by the way. So, as you can see, the camera angles were incredible. The announcers provide constant analysis. The drama of the faces on the sideline, the crowd, etc. It's really tailor-made for television. We currently have very lucrative contracts with all of our TV networks, and as you can see, the numbers are really just incredible, and television continues to propel the league's popularity. However, there's trouble in paradise. We and the league have done marketing studies that show that, well, believe it or not, this is an embellishment, but our studies have shown that there are fans that now would prefer to stay home to watch the game on their flat screen, have friends over, and watch the game from the comfort of their sofa. So we have had to kind of rethink and change the way we operate, much to the chagrin in many cases to the hardcore old-time football establishment. We've had to evolve, and football used to be, opening day was the time when we would say, let's do something really special for opening day. Let's make sure the anthem singer is really special and the halftime entertainment is special. Well, now that we realize that was dysfunctional thinking. We've got to do that every week for every game. We've got to make game day more than a game. For the fan, when they leave their house to come to our game, that's when they start thinking about the Colts. If they get in a traffic jam, if they have to stand in a long line to get into our game, that's a black eye for us. That's how the fan sees it, and gives them one more reason to justify staying home. So we've had to make some pretty tough decisions in recent years. For example, up until recently, if you were a home team, you would not show a replay of a play to the fans in the stadium on the big screen TV. You would not show a replay if it was of the opposing team doing something great, okay? You would only show a replay if we were scoring a touchdown or making a great play. Well, our research tells us that the fans don't care. They want to see replays as much as possible. They can't get enough replays. So the NFL has mandated, the owners have listened to the fans, the NFL has mandated that every team in every stadium must show a replay of every play throughout the game. Related to that, there's currently an arms race going on among NFL stadiums to install the biggest, most technologically advanced high-def video screens in the stadiums. One in Dallas right now is 50 meters wide by 22 meters high. Just incredible entertainment vehicles. If you go to a game in Dallas, you'll notice that the fans are watching the video board instead of the game on the field. So it wasn't what we intended, but the fans love it, and it is what it is. So then, you know, we've got a movement going on to install Wi-Fi in every stadium capable of allowing the fans to have a TV in the palm of their hands. We have an app in Indianapolis that the fans can download from their seats. This is only for the fans that come to the game, and they can pick their choice of replays from any angle, and they can see them as much as they want to. They can get up to the minute, up to the second injury information, statistics. They can watch highlights from games around the league as they're happening, scores from around the league, and we really think that this is a significant part of the future for our fans at the stadium. Other things we've done. One thing, we're really treaded on sacred territory, and if the founders of the NFL knew about this, they'd probably be turning in their graves right now. Cameras in the locker room. This is just a recent development, and the people in the locker room aren't crazy about it, but they've adapted. And this is where we can, we have to, by the league rule, we have a camera in our locker room before the game and at halftime, and we can show tidbits of what's going on behind the scenes to the fans in the seats. And it's really worked out well. Of course, you know, our cameraman takes great care of you know, what he's showing the 70,000 people. So, but it's worked out really well. We've had to evolve. We're making every game an event. You know, we have in Indianapolis anyway, we have 4 bands outside our stadium before every game. We have bagpipers that do a traditional march from parking into the stadium. We have food trucks, we have a bar, we have tailgate areas. We have a big screen TV out in the tailgate areas where fans can watch other games before our game starts, or pregame shows. We have food grilling so that, you know, as people are walking to the stadium, they can smell the bratwurst grilling on and that's just part of a football tradition. And that smell adds to the atmosphere and that big game feel and the excitement. We've had skydivers coming down onto the streets before games, and we have cheerleaders and alumni players out signing autographs and available for photos. So we're trying to do as much as we can to give a reason for fans to give up their TV at home and come to the stadium. How does this relate to water polo? Again, I don't know enough to make suggestions. All I can tell you is that the NFL has been extremely popular for decades, and yet we have needed to change the way we think. We've needed to evolve. You know, I've been in the business 34 years, and the changes have been significant. And it all comes around to the fan being first, our first priority. Without the fan, it's just a game, it's nothing more. And, you know, we have a very small window on Sundays to make a new fan or strengthen that bond with our existing fans. And if our fans come away from one of our games with a bad memory or a bad experience, we may never get them back. And we can't afford that in this day. And so we're in the business of making memories. And My clicker's stuck, but anyway, we're in the business of making memories, and as long as your fans can come away from your event with a good memory, they will continue to be fans. And that's all I have, and I appreciate your listening.
Pete, thank you so much. I think part of what Pete has spoken about that that many of you may not have the luxury of thinking about all that often is the marketing of the game, the marketing of your sport, of water polo. I had breakfast this morning with Peter Montgomery from Australia. You would know him from the Australian Olympic Committee, and we ordered cups of tea. Normally, a tea bag is a boring, uninviting activity. It's just a tea bag. Where we were this morning, the tea bag came in a completely different packaging, and it actually had a green leaf sticking up out of the top of the tea bag. I'm sure it's more expensive to present the tea bag in this type of packaging. I think it's probably the fact that we were staying at a very nice resort, but I think you have to think about maybe presenting your game in different ways with the idea of marketing and how your fan is receiving the game. And I wanted to bring you a couple of headlines from the United States. Again, not that they are revealing, they're just observations. This is the #1 newspaper in the United States. It's called USA Today. And the very front page story during the Sochi Olympics from February 24th was an article that said, adding fun to the games, extreme sports lift the USA. And this is a headline by a major influential newspaper, and the first two words are adding fun to the games. A few days later, in USA Today, in the sports section, the headline was putting fun in the games. This is 3 days later. And it seems to me to be interesting that someone believes that fun is important to the absolute delivery of the product. This is media recognition, but I think what Pete was talking about is that if your fans are not having fun at your games, it's harder to believe that you're going to attract sponsors. It's harder to believe you're going to attract higher TV ratings, because what people see at the stadium is a reflection of your sport, not just what goes on in the water, but what goes on around the water. And I think that may be a great point for us to jump off to our next guest from the Indiana Pacers, Rick Fuson.
Well, good morning. I'm especially happy to be here. 10 years ago, in the building then called Conseco Fieldhouse, we had the opportunity to host the World Short Course Swimming Championships, and I see so many familiar faces. Mr. President and Cornell and my friend Dale Newberger. I think in our business, back in 1999, when Dale and I went to Hong Kong to see a World Championship there, we sat there and we said, we don't have a clue what's going on, but we'll figure it out, and we did it. And so many of you were there, and that's the kind of the way that we look at our NBA situation today. And I want to go a little bit, talk about what Pete talked about, but I want to give you some context on maybe where we are, if I can figure this out. I can dance for a while.
And if you don't dance, I'm going to talk.
Okay.
So,
how are we doing? I want to give you a little context about our business. We're more than just the one sport. Our company manages an arena which has over 200 major events per year. We have 2 teams. We have both a mainstream NBA men's team, and then we also have in the 15th year of the WNBA, which is certainly less mainstream in the United States. So we have to look at, in terms of how we market, oftentimes differently from the winter men's sport to the summer women's sport. But there are so many similarities between the two, and it really starts with our building. All these things that we do in this building, from concerts to ice shows to college basketball and high school basketball. And we have a foundation that we give money to the community, 200 yearly events per year and 300 other events, the Pacers and the Fever. And we also have a minor league hockey team. But this all helps with our brand, a little bit differently maybe than just a singular sport, or the fact that in terms of water polo or the other aquatic events that have to go from place to place, we can market it right in one place. And we talk about being lucky in an urban area, which we are. And this is a picture from Pete and the Indianapolis Colts when they brought the Super Bowl to Indianapolis. It wasn't just about the Super Bowl. In fact, I went to the game, no offense to the NFL, but the game was really anticlimactic compared to what we did outside between Bankers Life Fieldhouse and the Convention Center, where in that week we called it the Super Bowl Village. We had over 1 million people in downtown Indianapolis. And that was one of the things that the NFL loved, and now has set a standard for other Super Bowls going across the country. This is the building. Many of you maybe will remember that. We're in our 15th season. It's an urban building, very open. We are not only a very busy entertainment facility, but it also really is like a museum. We want to touch the history of our sport, which we've done. It's the first retro building in basketball, in NBA basketball. As you go around the building, you see a lot of things that touch over the nearly 50 years of the Indiana Pacers. And as we look at things, just to talk about like Pete's done over the years, while the game is there and people love the game, with ticket prices being $40, $50, $60, $100, $150, or $300, sometimes $1,000 someplace, they expect more. And so we do a number of things throughout the season. I just kind of want to walk you through the fan experience, because ultimately, if the fan is not happy about it, they will have gone to a good game, but they will not have said in the end, I had the best time of my life. And that's the kind of situation that we're trying to create. So we will put concerts outside before they come in. We have a great entry pavilion where people gather, and they will come through, and it's very easy to get into the facility. There's no hassle from the time that they park till the time they come in the building. Hopefully Pete will attest to that, since he is a fan and comes to the games. We start with giveaways. People like to get things, whether it's a two-cent little giveaway, or whether it's a cup, or whether it's a bobblehead, whatever the case may be. We do this on a regular basis. We want them to take something home remembering the experience. Other things we do throughout our concourses, we might have face painters, or we might have caricaturists. You might spin a wheel and win a little pencil, whatever the case may be. But it's interesting that people want to be entertained from the time that they go there till the time they sit in their seat to watch the game. Face painters, not only do we have to market to the adults, but what we found is, in terms of our business, if we can make the child happy, then they will make sure that their parents will spend the money to take them because they had the great experience. So you'll see kids in their smiling faces because of things we're paying attention to do with them. All kind of different interactives that you'll have, whether it be the players, whether it be your players, whatever the case may be. People like to identify with them. They like to see how big their feet are, how big their hands are, how tall they are, how short they are, whatever the case may be, and they take those pictures home. We do things from bands throughout. The other thing that we have in our business, and not so much maybe in some of the other international sports, but we're big on food. And if we can get people to come in, be happy, buy food, go sit in their seat, be happy, then our money is better all the way along, because we look at every opportunity that we can to make sure that we're separating everybody from their dollar. Merchandise, the other side of this thing, the NBA merchandise, which is really global. Our business this year we'll probably do about $6 million this year in terms of our merchandise business, which we run inside. But we like to see those sold. We use the website, and we continue to sell great merchandise, and it really takes our brand out. It takes our brand everywhere. We were in Taipei and the Philippines for exhibition games this year, and it was amazing to see Pacer jerseys in those cities. and also Houston Rockets jerseys as well when we played them. But it's become a global sport, and through the merchandise, through the ease of the operation of all the technology, it's amazing how you can spread the word. And of course, then you come into the arena itself, and we do a lot of game operation type things that you'll see. I think probably the NBA probably is known for its entertainment, its glamour, maybe more than anybody else on a daily basis, because we have to do it 41 times on a regular season basis. So time after time after time after time after time, different in our sport versus the football. For instance, that we'll do it maybe 8 or 10 times on Sundays. We have to do it on Mondays and Tuesdays and Saturdays and Sundays, whatever the case may be. So we're always having to come up with different things to do. And you see there, it may look like Dallas Stadium if you've ever been there, but we put a new video board in last year. And it's one of the biggest ones in a NBA arena. But what we're trying to do now is, and I agree with Pete that they're looking at the screen, but now what we're trying to do is embrace technology. We have over 2.5 million hits that go to our page hits per month that go to our website. We have over about 1.2 million Facebook followers, 360,000 Twitter followers. So we're embracing technology. But what we're doing now is to take this device and we're going to interface this device with our scoreboard. Two things that will happen here before too long will be augmented reality, where you will point this unit at that scoreboard and you'll be able to play a game with our mascot. We'll also be using Google Glass, which is it's been around for a little while now, but more in its infancy now, where we will be putting Google Glass on our crowd, on some of our players during warm-up, perhaps on a coach, perhaps on our TV announcer, to make sure that we have all kind of different aspects around the arena. But we're trying to get people to use these to go to our scoreboard so that they see our sponsors, so our sponsors are more apt to spend more money with us. So we have to embrace technology. And this, when we were in the NBA Eastern Conference Finals last year, we brought a sense of community. And it's amazing when you give 18,000 friends the same yellow t-shirt and they put them on. Interestingly enough, they won't put white or they won't put blue on, but they'll put yellow on. And so this continues our brand where people will remember that they saw us on television, they saw us in news reports, and it will continue to make the Indiana Pacers a more popular crowd around. And we are about the fan. There's no question about that. The fan has to be first in terms of the entertainment value. We have a mascot. We didn't hurt our guy, Ambassador, but he's very, very popular. He does a couple hundred, and as Pete's mascot is for the Colts, they do hundreds of community visits each year, whether it's to kids or adults, whatever the case may be, but that helps our brand and it continues to be very popular. He continues to do things during, and he does dunks, whatever the case may be. People love this, and they remember it for him. And the other thing is we bring community groups in too, because one of the big deals is for these young kids, whether they be basketball players or dance groups like you see in front of you here, they will remember being a part of the Pacer experience because they were able to be on the same floor that the greatest athletes in the world were playing on. We have dancers. I don't know what else to say about that. Sometimes people like them, sometimes they don't. And we also do a lot of different events with our sponsors who take the word out as well. We try to use our building as a marketing tool so that they will continue to come back, continue to pay us more money, and feel like it's their home as well. We do all these things, both with kids and with companies as well. And one of the other things, our players really have become more and more and more accessible over the years. David Stern, who's been our outgoing commissioner, and Adam Silver, who's the new commissioner of the NBA, have made it very clear that these players have to be part of their communities, and they have to be known not only as good players but as good people. And we have a guy who's in charge of our basketball team by the name of Larry Bird, who probably personified as well as anybody in our history of basketball just that he was a good player, a great player, but he was a good community, a good family guy, and that's the kind of people that we have to have in our business, and they get to be known for that. And so after games, oftentimes we'll have We'll have the players sign autographs or before practice, whatever the case may be, and it becomes an endearing situation. So it's really about the fan, but at the same time, it's about the greatest athletes in the world. And I think there are some similarities between our game and the game of water polo. The ambassador kick. Just, you may throw me out, just watch.
So, I think the film that Rick has just presented is provocative in some ways, and I know that many of you may be saying that my country is not like your country. My stadiums are not like your stadiums. My people are not like your people, and our development is not the same. And I'm offended on your behalf that, you know, an American comes in and says, you should do this, you should make your introductions more exciting, because I think it fails to appreciate how difficult it is for many of you to stage these games, how difficult it is maybe to have a pool and to be able to put a team or two teams in the pool. And yet, in the middle of my being offended on your behalf and being offended by Americans in general, that there is somewhere between where we are in water polo and where others are with their delivery of the sport. And so I wanted to read you some research that you provided to us, and then I'd like to talk to this panel about ways in which we can use their expertise to possibly offer you some ideas that may or may not be appropriate for your country, for your federation, but that are at least something that you can take away from today's session. The research question was that I think many of you filled out, looking at the professional leagues in your country, meaning wherever you're from, and this could be the J League in Japan, it could be Australian rules football in Australia, it could be Fenerbahce in Turkey. It depends on wherever you are. Looking at the professional leagues in your country, identify the two key areas in which water polo should also focus. And the results perhaps may not surprise you. The results largely favoring development, targeted youth programs. 25% said sponsors creating synergies or partnerships, and a large percentage interested in operations and enhanced business or engagement models. So, gentlemen, I think where I want to go with this, and we've probably got about 15 minutes to be able to talk and to allow ourselves a few minutes for questions, is I'm guessing that none of you ever participated in water polo. None of you have probably a full appreciation of how very difficult the sport is to play. You may not be aware of actually how much is going on beneath the surface, and the fact that the cameras have a tendency to focus above the surface where the ball is, as opposed to below the surface where there's a great deal of athletic excellence taking place. What are your thoughts on, can we learn anything from what's going on in hockey or in cricket or football or basketball that can be made specifically relevant to water polo? And I'll start, Rick, with you, because you were nodding your head the most furiously.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I think there are a lot of things we can learn. I agree with you. As I watched the tapes from the Olympics, I saw most of the TV footage was from above. You're exactly right. There were a couple times where it was below the water, and I can't even imagine how strong you have to be. But to be able to talk about that and to be able to see from multi-different angles, and whether that's a television type situation in terms of convincing them to further this sport, we have got to make sure that the world sees how good of athletes these young people are. I don't think you get the full appreciation. You do with the biceps on this young man here, but you don't see what's going on below the surface much. And I think it's very important for those of us who don't know much about it, when we watch it at the Olympics, whatever the case, to know the sport better and to see what the dynamics are under the water, for sure.
Pete?
Yeah, I agree with Rick. Certainly, and in fact, I did try water polo once in college for about 3 minutes, okay? And then I forget that. So it was just too tough for me. But in the NFL and in the pro sports in general, we're always watching what other people are doing, and we have no problem with stealing ideas. Certainly, what Rick does with the Pacers has been an inspiration for us in a couple of areas, and we've stolen ideas from other NFL teams. So we keep an open mind, particularly. The NFL has been one of the most traditional leagues in sports in America. And for us to do the things that we're doing in recent years are out of necessity, and believe me, it wasn't easy to get those things approved. So I think that certainly there are probably some things that we could all learn from each other.
I think almost every American sport has stolen ideas from either other sports on the continent or from other leagues around the world. The basketball used to only have a 2-point shot, and then they took a 3-point shot from a league that did not survive. The hockey league, as we heard, changed the pads, changed the size of the goal, changed the rules to accommodate making the game faster. Football used to have very wide goalposts, and too many teams were kicking, and the research showed that people kicking for points was less exciting than throwing for points or running for points. So the league made the goalposts more narrow in order to reduce the amount of time that was spent kicking. I think we've seen it in baseball where they added the designated hitter. In the American football, they've made it easier for quarterbacks to throw passes to wide receivers. So I think a number of the people here would talk about the game being dramatically altered on a relatively frequent basis, but the idea not always originating inside the league, the idea originating somewhere else. Ben, your thoughts, or Jim?
Yeah, look, as somebody that enjoys social swimming, I'm completely in awe of the fitness and strength of water polo players. Just to quickly understand my role, I'm actually overseeing trying to encourage the growth of cricket in North and South America, other than the Caribbean, some pretty immature cricket markets. And my approach is very much a bottom-up approach. I suppose what I spoke about today was the T20 and the top-down approach, and introducing people to a game they don't know much about. And I suppose I'd be interested in talking informally to some people in the room over the next couple of days about how you introduce people to your game, given that from what I can see that you need enormous strength and power and swimming ability. How do young kids that haven't necessarily got those skills want to come and play water polo and maybe not get turned off in 3 minutes like some people have given that? So probably one of the key things I'm really keen to maybe develop over the next couple of days and see if there's lessons I can learn from that as well.
Beauty. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I'm a great fan of tradition. I know you have great tradition in this sport that is very difficult, as Pete said, to change in any sport. But I also know that there is increased competition for people's attention span and their wealth, and it's going to get worse as information flows more rapidly and as these mobile devices become more ubiquitous. So the obligation and requirement, if you would, of any entertainment medium, particularly sports, to be more fun, to use your headline, really is incumbent, I think, on this sport, which I do have a great affection for. So thinking about things that really could make your sport more fun, showcase your athleticism, showcase the dramatic interaction between the players. Again, radical, you don't mind radical thought, okay? And this is going to be very undiplomatic thought, but is there a way to change the field of your play? Is there a way to create structures under the water, for example, on which players could catapult to showcase their athleticism and give leverage for scoring? Is there a way to elevate the floor, lower the water, so that players can show more dramatic elevation or verticality during the game? Things like that had to be done, for example, in basketball with a three-point shot, or in hockey with narrowing the field of play and narrowing the size of the goals, were required to increase really fan excitement. And again, with all respect to the great tradition of sport, it's those kind of things that I would encourage the Federation to consider.
I would imagine that everyone in this room has thought about making water polo better than anyone up here. And any ideas that we would put forward would be things that you've thought about before. But there are interesting things to pick up on, like what Jim just said. Our organizational institution, the National Collegiate Athletic Association, used to prohibit dunking. That dunking the basketball, which is perhaps one of the most exciting parts of the basketball game, was prohibited. And when they allowed dunking, the game became more popular. And I'm not sure if any of you are familiar with the author Malcolm Gladwell. He's written a book, many books, one of which is called Outliers. And one of the things that he talks about is the capitalization rate, which inhibits people, a community, from becoming more successful. He says there are three things that keep people from success. One is poverty. It's very difficult for very poor communities to actually become better because there are just so many restrictions. The second, and I think it may be the most interesting for you, is what he calls institutional stupidity, which is that the institution itself inhibits the success rate of the organization or of the community because of how they are restrained. So when I talk about the NCAA not allowing dunking, which is what the people want to see, it's perhaps something for us to talk about is what do the fans want to see when they come to water polo? And I'm not sure that we could give that answer, but let's talk about something that I think is probably interesting to this group. How do you get more kids to play water polo? And Pete, I want to start with you because your sport is dangerous. There's a fear now that if you play football, you'll get a concussion. Mothers around the United States are saying, I'm not going to allow my child to play football because it will hurt my child. I don't think water polo has that problem, and yet I'm sure that it's difficult in different countries to get young people to come and play water polo. So Pete, your thoughts on how do we get more young people involved?
Sure, and it's much more difficult for a kid in the United States to play football than it is to pick up a basketball or a soccer ball. I mean, I can only tell you what we do. There's an effort in the National Football League, and particularly in Indianapolis with the Colts, where we have a department of people who devote their entire time to promoting the game among kids. And clinics, camps, visiting schools, promoting youth leagues. It's just an all-out blitz on getting kids into football and interested in football. That's at the grassroots level, and it's where our future is at, really, because those kids are going to grow up and be ticket buyers, basically, and football players. So we can't emphasize it more enough how getting out in the community at the grassroots level to kids and teaching them about the game, how critical that is to the future of our sport.
One of the things that soccer, football does is at the earliest levels, they have no goals at all, and you just have to kick the ball over the line. And so they start indoctrinating children into playing football at the ages of 3 and 4, where foot-eye coordination is actually somewhat difficult. It's certainly easier than hand-eye coordination, but really it's just the children are just running around kicking the ball, and if it goes over the line, it's a goal. And I think that getting young people involved is probably critical to the success, not for us to tell you that, you know that, but incredibly important for the success of water polo. I want to allow a couple of moments for questions. We have a microphone in the back, a young lady in white, and we're just curious whether anyone would have any questions for our panel. And if we see a hand, we'll take that question. We have a hand over here. I feel like an auctioneer, and the microphone is coming up to you. And thank you for your question.
Hi, my name is Edwin Suni. I'm from Peru. Basically, a question for all of you guys is the same. I assume that alcohol is allowed in all the premises. Is that correct? Yes.
Yes.
And the question is this. How do you feel it will impact negatively if you ban alcohol from the premises?
I think we'd be thrown out of business in the United States if we didn't have alcohol at our games.
I agree. It's so much a part of the American culture anyway that I don't know that we would accomplish much, and other than losing a lot of money from sponsors and a lot of fans, unfortunately.
Jim and Ben?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question, and I don't know how it relates to water polo. I'm guessing maybe you don't allow alcohol currently. All right. And I don't think about that very much because, in all honesty, when you go to sporting events, at least those that last 2 hours, you don't really see the evidence of alcohol much. People aren't, fans aren't getting, they're not under the influence, and they're not doing things they shouldn't be doing in the arena. But it certainly does loosen up the energy level, I think in ways that are productive, and certainly helps from the revenue and sponsorship front. So I think any professional sport in America that tried to curtail alcohol sales, abusive sales or overall overconsumption are things we all regulate, and we have good enforcement mechanisms in place. But I think it would be very unfavorably looked upon in the U.S. at least.
And if I might add that in Rick's the same case, where our security and our ushers are very, very focused on over-drinking. And I think that we can both say that in Indianapolis anyway, we have the fewest number of alcohol-related incidents at our games than anywhere else in America.
Just add too, if I can just real quick, I know this alcohol thing we don't want to talk about forever. We are finding more sports in America. I know we have what's called the Big Ten, which is a major basketball conference, and they have prohibited, this NCAA group, and they have prohibited alcohol sales at their tournament since it began. However, they're getting a lot of pressure from a lot of fans who want to be able to experience alcohol during the event, and they think it will make it better. So I think there's some changes coming even at other levels.
Ben?
Yeah, I can only talk from my sport in my country in Australia. I know that alcohol was an issue for a while. Obviously, cricket is a long day, often played in the extreme heat, and there were a few issues that were popping up as a result of alcohol. So I certainly know in a number of the stadiums for the longer versions of the game, they have actually cut the full-strength alcohol out and only have mid-strength or low-strength alcohol because it was having a detrimental effect on these new markets we're trying to get to of women, children and families. So there has been some adjustments made there.
Here.
We'll take one more question before we head out to the break. We have a hand down here in front.
Here.
You've got a question there? We ready?
Yes.
Sorry, excellent. I don't mean to cut questions off. I know some of you are anxious to get out to the break, but we'll take a couple of questions, and then I would very much encourage you, and I haven't done a very good job of really promoting the excellence of these speakers and the knowledge that they have. They will be here during the break, and we would very much encourage you to take a moment to introduce yourself and maybe ask a question that's relevant to your country or your responsibility. Yes, sir.
Hi, I'm Søren from Denmark. We are in any sense underdeveloped in the water polo. Could you give us any idea how can we get part of the fame from from the bigger nations so we can get some of the glory from the bigger nations like you were talking about getting to the local community? That's is a parallel to that. How do you do that? How can we get any of the big fames of the guy from Hungary on the picture?
Who wants that?
Okay, I would like to get more players in Denmark. To get that, I need to get some kind of publicity, to get some of my players interested in playing water polo.
More visibility for the players.
And you said getting to the local community is good. So how do I do that? How can I get some of the A nation team players to show up in Denmark?
I think that's certainly an interesting question. I think my personal opinion is I think you've got to ask the media people. I think you've got to ask some of the sponsors that you already have to get some more exposure in different places. And then I think maybe it might be worthwhile in bringing some opportunities to cities like ours where we may be able to help in terms of getting some additional publicity which may go back because we have so many media contacts. You know, the fact that we're here today, we may be able to do something when we go back on our own TV broadcast that talks about water polo. I'd love to do that. And so just those little things, I think, can help broaden it. But I think if you want help from folks like us, I think we'll be willing to give it to you to try to expand in your country or in our country.
Let me just add to that. You know, there's a great affinity between athletes, and I don't think you have to have, let's say, well-known water polo athletes from America coming to Denmark. If you have well-known NBA players, NFL players, I mean, the guy who holds the record for most points ever scored in the National Football League is from Denmark, right? You know who that is, by the way? Morten Andersen. So invite some of these athletes over, and they don't even have to be athletes, by the way. It's a celebrity affinity component. You know, get the celebrity athlete association with your sport in your country. And I can promise you we have so many retired, well-known athletes and celebrities in America. They love coming to Denmark, and they love coming to Peru. And any other place in the world, they love to travel. That's what they do. They sell sports. They sell athleticism. So I think that's a good idea, and I know we'd all be delighted to help you with that.
One last question here from down in front, and then we're going to release for our morning break.
Andrei Krukov, FINA Bureau. First of all, thanks, Cornell. Thanks, President Julio, for creating this conference. This is very important step forward for the FINA and for water polo in general. Thank you, all of you, the panel's member and the speakers, because today we have great experience with you and you share it with us. My question is, I don't like to criticize anyone, but you should understand my question because it's more or less clear. Sorry, my American colleagues, but it's a question because the panel's member, the most sports are present here is from United States. We know your sports like NFL and NHL, NBA is a religion in the States, in North America. As we understood, to create this religion is the most important thing to engage more people in the sport. This is the first problem which we know in the water polo. And I'd like to ask you your opinion first. We have our own opinion for this question, but your opinion is for us very important. The same sport, water polo, is a games in the States, but it's not much successful like your sports, which you are present as today. My question is why? You have such big legacy, such big experience in the States. I'm not criticizing again. This is a good question, but we should know the experience from the people from the side, from different sport. Thank you.
So, gentlemen, I think the question was, why isn't water polo bigger in the United States? That was my interpretation of it. And get your microphones going, and then let's continue to talk about this outside, but I think it's a great question.
Go ahead if you're ready.
I honestly don't know. I don't know why it's more popular. I know it's an exciting sport, and I think I mentioned that's pretty much what I know about it. It's exciting and the great athletes, and I think there's potential there. I mean, we get that question about soccer or football, worldwide. Why isn't it more popular in the United States than it is? And I don't know the answer to that other than that, baseball took off at the turn of the century, became the America's pastime, and then NFL and its translation to television catapulted the NFL into popularity. NBA has been extremely popular worldwide as well. So I don't know if there just hasn't been the emphasis and if it hasn't been overshadowed by these other bigger sports that got an earlier start.
I'll just add that the soccer, the European football, soccer in the U.S., their experience is instructive because they've wrestled with this question for 50 years, and they're just starting to have success here, and they're having success for two reasons. They started at the grass tops and the grassroots. They brought in people like David Beckham to give the celebrity panache to the sport, but they really invested heavily at the youth level and the high school level and now college level, where every college in America has a soccer team. In fact, there are 25,000 young people in my town playing organized youth soccer. So the only response I could make is if there is a way to invest in both levels, grass tops and grassroots, for water polo, then America is I think a wonderful land of opportunity for your sport, because people love the athleticism and they love the water feature of your sport.
And I think Ben would probably tell you that he's going to get cricket made a lot larger in the United States and in the North and South American continents. So we're going to wrap up. I'd like to ask you to give a big hand to our panelists. A wonderful job. And thank you to you for your attention.
Well, thank you, Rick, and thanks to the panel. I think we got off to a very great start. I know that the FINA president would like to hand over a small appreciation to the panelists. In the meantime, let me just say that we heard about these devices here from some of the panelists. Also, this conference is going viral worldwide. We are having a Twitter account which we have been warming up over the last 10 days. We're actually taking in questions from water polo communities around the world. And the questions are now coming in here. So from now on and over the rest of the day and tomorrow, we'll be feeding questions to the panelists also from outside this room, so we can really have the debate going. Mr. President?